Before we get into the video, as you can see, my backdrop is a little different. This is not a green screen. This is kind of a wall of fragrances. I'll try to put some B-roll in to give you kind of a full shot of what is behind me. This has been a project that my wife and I have worked on tirelessly over the past weekend from the time I'm filming this video. It was a lot of hours of work. We ended up getting 2 more cabinets. We filled them out with all the fragrances. So everything is in 3 contained cabinets, which is so exciting. You can see we have this whole setup with the boxes and bins on top of the cabinets, and they are actually organized so that the fragrances in a cabinet correspond with the boxes on top of the cabinet. And this is all for the future in terms of moving and in terms of purging, which is going to happen pretty soon. I have a lot of fragrances I've sectioned off that I no longer need. I'm not going to say they're trash for me, but they definitely could be treasure for some of you. So I will be in touch in some form or fashion when I'm ready to open the purge and pass some of these fragrances that I don't need anymore on to some of you guys. Anyway, that's not what this video is about. This video is about timeless masterpiece fragrances. This is the 3rd video like this I've done. You guys seem to love this series and I love making it. It's a lot of work. It takes a lot of time to film these videos and edit them, but you guys come in with good feedback. You watch the videos all the way through. That fuels the fire that keeps me going and wanting to make content like this. We're going to talk about 10 fragrances that have done one or more of the following. They have inspired a trend. So there are fragrances that now exist that may not have existed if it weren't for this one seminal fragrance. These fragrances might be exemplary in their genre. So maybe they're not completely unique. Maybe they didn't start something new, but within their genre, they stand out as doing things a little bit differently, or a lot of bit differently. And number 3, there's still nothing quite like it. This fragrance has been out for some time and there's nothing that really does what this fragrance does. One other point I want to make that really hammers home the idea of a masterpiece, and this is really important when it comes to talking about masterpiece fragrances. We're not just talking about stuff that smells really good to us. This is not a subjective summation. For one, a masterpiece cannot be separated from its creator. So the art must go with the artist. And honestly, this is kind of a weird thing that is lost in perfumery, especially on the mass scale when it comes to this online space. We don't always talk about perfumers, which is weird. It's kind of like talking about songs you like, but you don't have any regard for who performed them or wrote them. It's kind of weird when you think about it. So every now and then I like to bring the perfumers into this space, the people who are the reason why you enjoy some of the fragrances you love. So once again, these fragrances objectively are iconic, which means that it doesn't matter whether you or I like them or love them or hate them, their status remains untouched, primarily because of sales. They've sold well, but what are people saying about them? What is the mass of people who've tried these fragrances saying? They're saying that they're extraordinary. However, where subjectivity comes in here is timelessness. If you're asking me, all these fragrances are subjectively timeless, and that's where you may disagree, and you're welcome to do so. We can talk about that in the comments, but maybe with the exception of one of the fragrances, I feel like all of them indisputably smell like they could have come out at any point in time. They're not bound to their point of release. Let's cut the blabbing. Let's dive into these 10 timeless masterpieces. And just for fun, we're going to talk about these fragrances chronologically from earliest to latest. This first fragrance is also the cutest in this list because it's the smallest tiny little bottle. This is from Clive Christian, and this is one fragrance that slightly breaks a rule that I just said a second ago. This is 1872. This is an absolute classic from the house, and it basically came out in 1872 when this house started. It kind of changed hands over the past couple decades into what it is now, but this original formula, as far as I understand, was introduced in the late 19th century. Now, that being said, I don't know who composed this. I couldn't find that information. Maybe I didn't dig deep enough. If you happen to know, let us know down in the comments. But this is a bit of a grandfather of the citrus aromatic genre. When you first spray this fragrance on, you're going to be met with a bright, mouth-watering, citrusy presence. A little bit juicy, a little tart, but there's a pretty sharp kind of green mossy woodiness behind it that makes it feel a little bit more sophisticated. There are many fragrances that have come out since 1872 that toe the line with this profile. They do smell similar. It's a classic profile. It's relatively simple while having a lot of depth. Our first one, Clive Christian, 1872. This next fragrance was technically introduced in the late 1940s, I believe 1947. From the house of Jacques Fath, we got Green Water. It's gone through several different changes. I'll put a few of its iterations here on screen. This version is the most recent iteration, which was released in 2015, perfumed by the great Cecile Zarokian. I put it here early in the list because, again, original introduction is 1947. It is composed of a lot of natural ingredients, and it doesn't have a lot of staying power as a result. But when you smell this profile, I don't know who in their right mind would expect this to last for a full day. It's so fresh and minty and green and a little citrusy. There's not a whole lot of legs to it. Maybe a little bit of a floral quality. It's like the upper atmosphere. It is kind of light and fresh and airy and easygoing, but there is this timeless, classy flair to it. I'm gonna give this a spray in the air. Wow, it's so fresh, but still smells a little bit sophisticated. It's something that you could dress up a little bit more if you wanted to. That's Green Water from Jacques. This next fragrance might be the exception that I referenced earlier. This is from the house of Caron, originally released in 1978, but still being sold today, still on shelves for a reason. This fragrance, Yatagan, man, what a scent. This fragrance smells like pine, woods, a little bit of smoke, and a little tiny bit of funk. Ultimately, all the green, foresty elements of it smell a little bit like celery. To some of you guys, that might be a deal breaker, and I'd say if it is, then don't even worry about this fragrance. But with the other elements, with a little bit of this animalic nature, with the incense, it has this warmth to it that smells like the most masculine man, but it's so elegant. That being said, I gotta be in the mood for this. I don't absolutely love this fragrance. I appreciate the crap out of it, but I don't love it. But once again, we're talking about objectivity here. Objectively speaking, this is a masterpiece. This is a phenomenal fragrance that has had a tremendous impact on the fragrance industry and on a lot of people. And again, there's a reason why you can still find modern formulations today after all these years. So regardless of what you and I think, this is a phenomenal fragrance, but try it at your own risk if you haven't. That is Yatagan from Caron. You know, we got to talk about Guerlain if we're going to talk about timeless masterpieces that have affected and inspired the fragrance industry and community. Lovely stuff, and still haven't smelled anything quite like this. Again, from Guerlain, this is L'Instant de Guerlain. Very unique scent profile that is easy to understand. This is kind of a dusty, dry, chocolatey cacao blended with this fresh orange and some damp, earthy patchouli. Now, the eau de toilette in particular is pretty transparent. There's a lightness here. What I just described might sound like everything comes together as this very noticeable profile that you can detect everything all at once. No, it's pretty translucent and honestly, maybe even a little bit fleeting. I find that this eau de toilette is not very easy to detect when I wear it after the first few hours. I don't even think it lasts all that long. If that is bothersome to you, maybe skip it. Maybe go for the EDP, which I haven't tried, so I can't speak for it, but we have to admit that this profile is phenomenally timeless. It's a beautiful masterpiece of a scent that I don't think anything else smells quite like. It really does stand out, and there's a reason why they're still making this fragrance. Let me know if you enjoyed this one. That's L'Instant de Guerlain from the legendary perfumer Jean-Claude Helena from Hermes, released in the year 2005. I know we kind of skipped over the 1990s. I talked about quite a few 90s fragrances in some of the past iterations of this series, so maybe go back and check out the other episodes if there's fragrances here that I've seemingly missed. But we're talking about Un Jardin sur le Nil, one of the hallmark standout fragrances of this entire collection, of the Jardin collection. It translates to garden on the Nile, and that's what it smells like. It smells like a vegetable garden near water. It's so naturalistic. It smells like carrots, unripe mango. It smells a little bit grassy in a way, and there's this lotus flower that brings the watery nature. It is very delicate smelling. Some guys might find this a little bit feminine. I don't really find it to be that much because it's not overly floral to me. There are a lot of florals in here and they play a pretty integral role, but to me this primarily smells vegetal, green, watery, and fresh. And that's about it. It doesn't really do much more beyond that. It's a very specific scent personality. Another one I have to be in the mood for, but I do really enjoy this fragrance. It is a little bit transportive and definitely timeless. Un Jardin sur le Nil. Released in 2006 from the house of Le Labo and from perfumer, I believe her name is Daphne Bouguet. I don't know exactly how to pronounce her name.
So I apologize, Daphne. You'll never see this.
This is called Rose 31. And this is one of those polarizing picks from this house. There's people who will not understand how people could like this fragrance, and that's okay. You're gonna see a pretty massive dent in this bottle. Mostly that was worn by my wife, Grace, because I got this as a gift for her several years back. I've enjoyed it myself here and there. I do find it to be a perfectly unisex, in fact, maybe kind of almost masculine masculine leaning rose because of the cumin. Dry, spicy rose. It's such an interesting combination. I can't say this is the first fragrance to do it, but it's definitely a seminal one that has kind of branched off into many other iterations of this type of profile. I almost chose Cartier Declaration d'un Soir as a part of this list, which I believe came out in 2012. However, I had to forego it for this one because this kind of does a similar thing. They don't smell the same. Ultimately, they are different, but this does a similar thing of combination of rose and spices in this way. And it's obviously earlier, can't say it directly influenced the Cartier, but who knows? Maybe Mathilde Laurent was inspired by this a little bit. Who knows? Nonetheless, beautiful scent profile. Not going to be for everyone. Has a little bit of this, as people say, funky or BO feel to what is kind of a fresher, slightly sweet rose. Some woods in the background. It's a rose with depth and substance. I really appreciate it. Not my favorite from the house, but I like it a lot. That is Rose 31 from Le Labo. 2007 from perfumer Richard Herpen, the iconic fragrance that has been cloned to death, that's still on the market for a reason, Oud Wood. Tom Ford here. This is the private blend line. This was among the first fragrances that released in the private blend line that really paved the way, pioneered a lot of really interesting things in perfumery. Oud Wood is one of them, bringing oud in this very westernized way and making it warm and sweet and fresh spicy. There's cardamom, there's maybe some vanilla in here, there's some other woody elements. I don't really need to describe this too much. I think a lot of you guys have already tried Oud Wood. If you haven't for some reason, it will be linked down below. You can check out a decant. Very, very attractive scent profile that I love to wear for the fall time, day or night really, when I want to have a classy vibe. That is Oud Wood from Tom Ford. In 2009, we got this beauty, which had quite a bit of limelight and hype in the YouTube community, and that's relatively speaking because I think at the time this was super hyped. The YouTube fragrance community was pretty dang small, so I can't say it was making a whole lot of echoes in the fragrance industry. But now that the community is a whole lot larger, there's not a whole lot of talk about this fragrance, so it has kind of slipped back under the radar. If you can still get this, I recommend getting it. Again, I'm going to link to what I can find down below from perfumer Ineke Ruland. This is Field Notes from Paris. The house is called Ineke. Field Notes from Paris is the only fragrance I've ever tried from this house, so I feel a little bit silly about that. It's like loving a certain song from a band but being afraid to listen to any other song. I think because you're afraid you won't like it quite as much. Let me know if you can relate to that. It's silly, and once you get over that hump, you realize, oh man, they have a lot of other good songs to check out. Same can go for perfumery. This is warm, almost honeyed-like floral tobacco fragrance. Almost has the illusion of coffee or some kind of latte feel. There's a warmth here. It just kind of depicts the idea of sitting maybe in a cafe or by a fire on a cozy, cold day, you know, bundled up. Maybe you're writing or journaling or reading or something like that. It just has this very inviting, warming vibe to it. Perfect fall weather vibes. I can't say that this fragrance inspired a lot of other things, but I still have yet to smell something that does exactly what this does in the way that it does it. Really accessible and easy to like if you get your nose on it, so I recommend it. That is Field Notes from Paris. Maybe check this one out as we approach the fall season. This next fragrance was released in 2016, and if you're asking me, to date, this is still the most unique and special scent profile that has come out of this house. Now, it's not my absolute favorite. I like it a lot, a whole lot, but it's not in my like top 5 from the house just because I don't wear it that often. There's others I wear more than this, but I have to admit, this is among one of the most interesting scent profiles that have come from the house of Roja Parfums, perfumed by Roja Dove. This is a Midsummer Dream. This is such an intriguing scent profile. It is so different. You're going to get a lot of LME resin. LME is this kind of lemony, piney, balsamic feel. It's a little bit sweet. It's again a little bit green, damp. This is blended with some florals. I think there's some rose in here. A lot of dry, almost woody mossiness as it dries. I think it's technically a sheep. The way it comes off is so elegant. It just kind of dances. It doesn't hit you all at once. When you smell it up close, it could come off maybe a little bit stuffy, but I think this is completely and timelessly elegant. And I haven't smelled anything that smells like this, even from the house. It's pretty distinctive. And I want to know if you've tried this one. If you haven't tried it, get a sample of this. Don't even bother blind buying it. You might not like it and it's going to be very expensive. So sample first. There will be links down below. Let me know if you enjoy A Midsummer Dream and how you feel about it being called a timeless masterpiece. And our final fragrance, released in 2017. When I first heard about this release and I saw people trying it and sharing their opinions, I was a little scared. I was nervous because I was seeing quite a divisive response to this. So I got my hands on a decant, I smelled it, and I was immediately repulsed and drawn in all at the same time. And it took me a couple years to figure out why I liked this fragrance so much. It was then discontinued, so I was like, you know what? I'm just gonna get a bottle of this just so I have it, because I know deep down I really like this fragrance. This is from the house of Gucci, and this is Gucci Guilty Absolute Pour Homme, perfumed by Alberto Morillas.
Wow, wow, wow.
Timeless masterpiece fragrances don't always mean universal acceptance and likability. Sometimes in the best cases, they are divisive fragrances. This one is a dividing line. I don't think I've heard of any person on the fence about this in terms of, I think I like it, but I'm not sure. I've seen people say, I like this, but I don't know where to wear it. You're on this side of the fence. You like the fragrance. And I've heard even more people say, who could wear this? Everyone is right. There's no wrong in taste. This is a very abrasive, leathery, woody fragrance. Lots of leather, lots of vetiver, maybe some patchouli. It's medicinal, it's dry, but there's something smooth and elegant about it, even though it's a pretty authoritative scent profile. There's something about this that just smells like a confident guy, especially if you don't overspray it and don't smell it directly up close and call that your experience. You're gonna find it so weird and you're gonna be confused as to how anyone could like this. If you get this in the air, either from your hand or from a blotter, and experience it, especially for the first time in that way, I'm not going to say you're going to love it, but you might have a better chance of not finding it terrible and maybe even liking it. I think it's an incredible fragrance. Unfortunately, my wife does not like this, but nonetheless, I'm going to hold on to this bottle for the long haul. I love this stuff. It's so good to me. It's kind of addictive. I can't get away from it. I don't wear it a ton because, as I just said, my wife doesn't love it. I'm not going to wear a fragrance around her that she hates, but one day I will convert her. I'm going to wear it on the right day and the right occasion, just a couple sprays, and I think she's gonna be like, oh, what are you wearing? And I'm gonna say, gotcha. That is Gucci Guilty Absolute. Let me know what you think of it. All right, those are 10 more timeless masterpieces. I hope you enjoyed this series. If you did, let me know by liking this video. Make sure you subscribe for more, and I want to know down in the comments what you think of these fragrances, if you've tried them, if you own them, and if you haven't tried any of them, there's going to be links once again down in the description to some samples and bottles. I want to thank you so much for tuning in. Peace. I'll see you in the next one.